She fined me $12,200 for a fence she claimed was 2 inches too tall, then showed up at my front gate with a clipboard and a smirk. That was 57 days before she pulled a gun on me in broad daylight. 57 days of me documenting every word she said. Welcome to HOA Society. My name's Jack Turner. I'm a civil engineer out of Bastrop County, Texas, and I live on the last intact piece of my family's ranch. 43 acres my grandfather fenced with his own hands in 1956. I make my living certifying drainage permits for subdivisions, the very kind of developments the HOA president, Denise Cole, drools over. If you've ever fought one of these boards, stick around. And if you haven't, where are you watching from? I'd like to know how far these stories travel. When my father died 3 years ago, I promised him I'd keep the ranch in the family. It wasn't sentiment. It was a contract he wrote into the trust. No sale under duress. That clause is why I kept his old deed framed by the fireplace, and why Denise started sniffing around last spring when a developer named Glenn Mark offered to buy half the neighborhood for $1.6 million an acre. She wanted my land absorbed, rezoned, and flipped. When I declined, she leaned in close at the HOA picnic and said, "Everybody sells, Jack. It's just a matter of enforcement." The first notice arrived 4 days later. Violation, non-compliant perimeter structure. The fence. My fence. 12-gauge welded wire, 50-inch height, same as the survey spec. She cited Section 4.3.2 of the Community Design Standards, which only apply inside the subdivision, not to my grandfathered parcel. I laughed at first, sent back a short email with the legal description attached. No reply. Then came notice number 2, unapproved livestock shelter. It was my tool shed, built in '98 with county permit number 14907. She stacked 3 more: weed encroachment, improp, lighting, visual nuisance, tractor parts. Each fine doubled every week. By week 3, I owed $5,400. That's when I drove to the county clerk's office and met Rita Morales, the records supervisor. Small woman, sharp eyes, purple thermos that smelled like chicory coffee. She remembered my father. "He filed a variance out here in '82, she said, flipping a giant binder. Said the land predates the HOA by 12 years. She copied me the page and stamped it. Certified true copy. April 12, 2024. That page became my anchor. Because what Denise didn't know, or didn't care to know, was that my ranch sat on a separate plat entirely, designated agricultural exempt A1, meaning her HOA rules held no authority here. But she kept escalating anyway. The morning she sent an inspector, some kid with a neon vest, to photograph my barn, I stood on the gravel drive, coffee in hand, and watched him trespass. "You got jurisdiction here?" I asked. He muttered something about board authorization. I filmed him leaving, time-stamped 09:16 a.m. on April 17th. Later that night, I filed a written complaint with the sheriff's office, incident number 24-11459. By week 5, her tactics grew theatrical. Anonymous posts on the neighborhood forum calling me non-compliant rancher endangering property values. Flyers on mailboxes about livestock waste runoff. Glenmark's surveyors started staking flags near my east fence. That's when my friend Nate, former county inspector, bad knees, chain smoker, pulled up in his old Dodge and said, "She's laying the groundwork for an abatement claim. You need to dig deeper." We spent 2 nights cross-referencing parcel maps. Nate traced utilities, easements, drainage right-of-ways. At 11 p.m. the second night, he tapped a line on the screen. "There's your edge. Look, utility easement granted to your dad in '79 runs under half their HOA park. If that easement's still active, you control maintenance access." Knowledge nugget number 1. In most U.S. states, a recorded utility easement remains valid until explicitly vacated by both parties, regardless of ownership changes. I called Rita the next morning. "Pull me easement number 79881. She faxed the microfilm, signed by my grandfather, notarized, and here's the gem, granted perpetual access rights for agricultural equipment necessary for drainage upkeep, meaning I had legal right to drive through their park whenever I needed, meaning the HOA's jewel property sat partially under my grandfather's name. I didn't say a word to Denise. I smiled at her next meeting, paid the bogus fines under protest, check memo, paid under duress, and kept quiet. Every receipt, every notice went into a red binder labeled Chronology of Harassment. She noticed the silence. Power gets nervous when it stops hearing echoes. On May 9th, 2024, she showed up at my gate again, phone camera rolling. "You think you're clever hiding behind old paperwork," she said, waving a manila folder. "This community has standards. We'll have your property condemned if we must." I didn't reply, just recorded. The gravel crunched under her heels as she left. That night, sitting at my desk with the ranch lights off, I opened the easement file and felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear exactly, but the weight of inheritance. My father's handwriting on that document looked shaky, like he knew I'd need it someday. 57 days later, she'd draw that gun, but before that, she'd make one more mistake. She'd underestimate how quietly an engineer can build a trap. The first real crack showed 2 weeks later when the HOA's certified letter landed on my porch. Notice of intent to enforce easement restrictions. The irony almost made me laugh. They were challenging the very easement they didn't know I controlled. Denise signed it herself, blue ink, right under a line citing SE. Action 5.7, Board Authority to Limit Agricultural Access. Only problem? That section didn't exist. I pulled the latest bylaws from the county filings. Last Amendment 2018, no Section 5.7. So I drafted a response in my usual calm tone. Please specify the cited authority, as no such section is recorded under the HOA's 2018 charter or any subsequent amendments. For your convenience, I've attached the certified version. Sent it certified mail, return receipt, because paper beats bluster every time. When you fight an HOA, you learn quick. They thrive on confusion. The moment you document everything, every call, timestamp, quote, they start to unravel. 3 days later, Nate came by with 2 coffees and a grin. "Guess who just ordered a soil test on your side of the creek?" Let me guess, Denise. She thinks she can flag you for runoff into HOA drainage. Problem is that runoff's theirs, not yours. He showed me the work order. The inspector request listed Parcel 14C, East Common Park. That parcel, as we'd confirmed, overlapped my family easement. That night I stayed up scanning every plat map, overlaying digital coordinates until the laptop fan wheezed. There it was, clear as sunlight through cedar leaves. The HOA's own park sitting on land with my access rights recorded in 1979. They'd been mowing my ground for 45 years and didn't even know it. I remember whispering, "Thanks, Dad," to the old map. 2 mornings later, Denise called an emergency compliance review. I went. 7 of them sat behind folding tables, plastic pitchers of water sweating onto minutes sheets. Denise smiled like a realtor at closing. "Mr. Turner, the board has voted to impose a cumulative fine of $12,600 for ongoing violations." "Violations that don't exist," I said. Her vice chair, a retired dentist named Harmon, chimed in. "You're technically within our boundaries, sir. Technically. You should check your plats before you threaten condemnation." I set the certified easement copy on the table. "This document predates your HOA by 12 years. It gives my family perpetual right of access across your property. So before you find me again, remember, you're driving golf carts across land you don't fully own." For a moment, the room went silent, except for the hum of the ceiling fan. Then Denise leaned forward. "You think that old paper scares me? We'll see what the county thinks." "Good idea," I said, collecting my binder. "They already certified it." As I walked out, I could feel her eyes drilling through the back of my hat. That was the night she called Glenmark's lawyer. You can tell a predator's cornered when it bites without feeding. Over the next week, citations multiplied, 15 in 5 days. My mailbox rattled with envelopes like dry bones. Unapproved signage, private property notice, failure to maintain uniform mailbox, grass height variance, tractor noise complaint. I logged them all. Then came the online smear. Someone posted in the Friendly Neighbors Facebook group that I'd threatened an HOA official with violence. The post stayed up 2 days before Facebook took it down. I screenshot everything, even the likes. It's about here I usually pause and ask viewers something. If you've ever faced an HOA that lies or harasses, what's your first move? Do you fight with documentation or with silence? Drop your answer below. Or if you're one of those HOA lurkers reading this to gauge the crowd, leave your message here too. The night after that post, I sat on my porch with my dog, Duke, listening to the windmill creak. My chest ached again, the same tightness that started when Dad died. I remembered him saying, "Land only matters if you leave it better than you found it." At that moment, revenge felt small. What mattered was posing how they weaponized power. So I called an attorney I'd worked with on infrastructure projects, Ellen Rivera. 48, sharp as a pin, drives a white Tacoma with mud on the tailgate. She came by with a folder marked CCR Casework. "You've got a solid selective enforcement claim," she said, flipping through my binder. "They're applying rules outside their jurisdiction. But here's the kicker. You can't just defend. You need leverage." I told her about the easement. She smiled. "Don't reveal it yet. Let them overextend." Knowledge nugget number 2. In most states, HOAs cannot lawfully assess or line properties outside their recorded plat boundaries. Doing so can expose the board to civil damages and insurance loss under errors/omissions coverage. We built a plan. I'd let the board keep stacking violations, each one documented, while Ellen quietly filed notice of potential overreach with their insurer. Meanwhile, Nate would pull inspection logs on their park maintenance. If their mowing contractor crossed my easement without consent, that was trespass. 3 days into this plan, a county inspector showed up unannounced, saying someone had filed a concern about soil contamination from livestock effluent. I laughed. "The only livestock here is Duke, and he weighs 80 pounds. The inspector shrugged, took soil samples, and left. Later, I learned Denise had filed the complaint using her HOA email, public record. I printed it, circled her signature, and slipped it into the binder. Evidence item number 37. That night, Ellen texted, "Keep calm, they're about to hang themselves." But Denise didn't slow down. She scheduled a special hearing to discuss potential removal of non-compliant owners from the association. My name was the only one on the agenda. I showed up early, binder under arm, wearing my father's old hat. The conference room smelled of copier toner and coffee. As neighbors filed in, I saw a few familiar faces, retirees, young couples, folks who'd waved at me for years. Some looked away. Denise started with a speech about community integrity and shared values. Then she held up a photo of my tractor parked by the creek. "This," she said, "is a visual blight." I raised my hand. "That photo was taken from my side of the fence, which you entered without permission. That's trespass." She ignored me. "We will vote tonight on escalating to county code enforcement." When the motion passed 5-2, I smiled again. "Thank you. That's the overreach we needed." The room went quiet. Someone whispered, "What's he mean?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Because the countdown had started. And when it hit 0, that old easement would turn into something far more powerful, a trigger they couldn't unpull. 2 nights later, Nate called me from his truck, voice low. "You sitting down? You're gonna love this. I pulled the HOA's maintenance contract. Guess who signed it?" "Please don't say Denise." "Denise," he said, laughing through a cough. "And she authorized mowing across your easement. Every invoice paid with HOA funds. That's unauthorized use of your land. You've got them on civil trespass, Jack." I felt that familiar burn in my chest. Not anger this time, but momentum. "Send me copies. And Nate, get the metadata. Timestamps, GPS logs, everything." He whistled. "Man, you're turning this into an engineering project." Exactly. That weekend I laid out my evidence like blueprints across the dining table. Maps, certified copies, emails, photos, incident numbers. I wasn't just building a case. I was building an unbreakable sequence. When you construct proof with structure, it holds like reinforced concrete. Ellen came by Sunday afternoon, hair in a messy bun, thermos of coffee in hand. "Let's talk timing," she said. "You want them to push further before you show your hand. We'll give it, say, 3 weeks. 3 weeks until what? Until we file a notice of intent to assert easement control. It's not a lawsuit, yet. It's a declaration of rights. Once recorded, it becomes public record, and they can't claim ignorance." "Good," I said. "Let them march right into it." Knowledge nugget number 3. Once a property right, like an easement or covenant, is recorded and acknowledged by the county, it supersedes later HOA rules. Any board enforcement that contradicts it risks being voided as ultra vires, beyond their authority. I still remember that next Monday morning, 5:42 a.m. dawn barely touching the cedar line when I heard tires crunching on my driveway. I stepped outside, coffee mug steaming, and saw two men in reflective vests unloading survey equipment. "Morning," I said. "Can I help you?" One glanced at a clipboard. "We've been authorized by the HOA to mark boundary adjustments." "You got a permit for that?" He hesitated. "Our boss said." "Your boss isn't the county." I held up my phone and started recording. "You're on private land under an active easement. Leave now." They did. By 7:15 a.m., that clip was sitting in Ellen's inbox, and the sheriff's deputy had a copy logged as supplemental evidence. That day, Denise sent me an email at 11:07 a.m. "Cease interfering with official HOA business or face escalation." I replied one line, "Please provide lawful jurisdiction." She didn't respond. Instead, she posted in the community app, "Certain members are attempting to destabilize our HOA. Stay vigilant." The comments blew up, half supportive, half skeptical. The tone had shifted. People were starting to ask questions. That's when I decided to film a short update for my own records. Just me, the camera, and the binder. I didn't publish it, not yet, but I said the words out loud. When authority abuses ignorance, evidence becomes justice. Maybe I was talking to my father, or maybe to whoever might need this someday. Later that week, Nate brought more intel. "You're gonna want to sit down again. The HOA's insurance carrier just flagged them for review." Ellen confirmed it an hour later. "They filed a claim for potential legal exposure tied to property disputes," she said. "Their underwriter's going to request documentation. Once the insurer sees they're finding outside jurisdiction, they'll freeze coverage." Meaning? Meaning Denise's personal liability goes up. Fast. The board didn't know it yet, but their own insurance would soon demand answers they couldn't give. I was patient like a man counting fence posts. Now, if you're watching this, I want your take. Should HOAs be required to carry personal liability insurance for board members who abuse power? Or should they face those lawsuits individually? Comment what you think. Where's the line between community service and tyranny? By early June, the retaliation turned meaner. Someone slashed 2 tires on my truck. Another night, my gate lock was jammed with epoxy. Duke barked for hours, restless. I reported both incidents, incident numbers 24 to 102-977 and 24 to 102-978, but no suspects. I kept the reports filed anyway. Denise called another special inspection the next week. This time she brought a county official, a young guy named Mason. I recognized him from drainage permitting. "Morning, Jack," he said, sheepish. "You know this is outside HOA limits, right?" He nodded slightly. "They told me it was a joint inspection." I showed him the map, the deed, and the easement copy. His eyes widened. "They didn't mention this. I'm logging the coordinates." That was the turning point. I didn't know it then, but Mason's report would end up on the county attorney's desk, and from there, into the public record. The next day, Denise stood at my fence line, phone raised, recording. "You can't hide behind old paperwork forever," she shouted. "You're embarrassing this community." I looked at her over the post rail. "No, Denise, I'm reminding it what the law looks like on it. Ike." For the first time, she didn't reply. That night, Ellen sent me a text. "We're close. Hold your nerve." I didn't sleep much. The sound of crickets and the faint tick of the wall clock kept time with the slow boil of my plan. By morning, I'd made a decision. I'd use my father's easement not as a shield, but as a sword. 2 days later, I stood inside the county records office again, signing paperwork under Rita's watchful eyes. "You sure you want to record this now?" she asked. "Timing's right," I said. "They've overreached enough. I want this in the public index by tomorrow." The form was simple. Notice of assertion of easement rights under instrument number 79881. Once stamped, it meant the world would see that the HOA's crown jewel, its park, sat partly on land controlled by my family's access rights. It wasn't ownership, but it was enough to paralyze any future sale, transfer, or rezoning until the easement holder, me, approved. In real estate terms, that's checkmate. I took the stamped copy, folded it into my binder, and walked out into the Texas sun. The smell of cut grass and diesel mixed with the heat off the courthouse steps. That's when my phone buzzed. "Ellen." "You just made the county record feed," she said. And guess who subscribes to that feed? Glenn Mark's legal team. Bingo. That night, a black SUV idled outside my gate for 10 minutes before driving off. Duke growled low in his throat the whole time. I logged the incident, videoed the taillights disappearing. By morning, the community forum was on fire again. Breaking, Turner claims rights over HOA land. Half the neighbors thought I'd lost it. The other half wanted to know how. I didn't answer. Silence still had value. Denise, though, was louder than ever. She sent a mass email claiming my false filings threatened property values and that the HOA would take all necessary legal action. Ellen Jus. Saint smiled when she read it. She's bluffing, she said. If they file suit, discovery opens. They can't afford what I'd dig up. Still, Denise wasn't done performing. She scheduled a town information session at the clubhouse for June 23rd. I marked it in red. The next day, I met with Nate at the diner off Highway 71. He laid out more papers. This time, HOA maintenance invoices marked Park Drainage Service. The totals, $3,400 monthly since 2019. You realize, he said, they've been maintaining your easement at HOA expense for 5 years. That's misappropriation of community funds. I grinned. They've been paying to maintain my land. Exactly. That's fraud if their members didn't know. The plan crystallized right there over burnt coffee. I wouldn't confront them privately anymore. I'd confront them publicly, with witnesses, cameras, and a neutral authority on site. But first, patience. The days leading up to the meeting dragged. HOA volunteers dropped off another urgent notice at my gate. Same recycled language, $18,200 now due. I stapled it to the inside of my binder with a note. Evidence number 52, duplicate threat, unverified. In between, I kept working. My engineering firm had deadlines, and I wasn't about to let this nonsense ruin my livelihood. But every evening, as the sun slid behind the pecan trees, I'd step outside, touch the fence, and remind myself why this mattered. This wasn't just about land. It was about the principle my father lived by. Do the right thing, even if the right thing stands alone. By the time June 23rd arrived, I had everything aligned. Ellen arranged for a county compliance officer, Officer Whitmore, to attend as a neutral observer. Nate handled AV. And I had one last piece prepared. A single folded deed copy, stamped and notarized, ready to hit the table at the right moment. I showed up early, parking the truck under the oak near the clubhouse. The air smelled of humidity and nervous perfume. People milled around the entry, murmuring. Denise stood near the podium in a coral blazer, all smiles for the camera crew she'd invited. "Evening, Jack," she said as I walked in. "Glad you decided to come hear the truth." "I'm here for it," I said. She launched into her speech about rogue landholders and protecting the community. Her voice carried that rehearsed righteousness politicians love. When she held up a folder labeled Non-Compliance Summary, Turner Ranch, I knew it was my cue. "Madam President," I said, loud enough for the microphone to catch, "before you continue slandering me, I need to enter something into the record." The room went still. I pulled the certified easement copy from my folder and set it on the podium. The sound of the paper's slap echoed against the walls. "This document, recorded June 17, 1979, grants my family perpetual access rights through what you now call the East Common Park. Your HOA has built amenities over it, mowed it, and billed members for its upkeep. As of last week, this easement was reaffirmed and filed as public record under number 79-881. That means every dollar spent maintaining it was unauthorized." Denise's smile cracked. "You're bluffing." Officer Whitmore cleared his throat from the back. "Ma'am, I've verified the record myself. It's legitimate." The room rippled with gasps and murmurs. One man whispered, "Does that mean?" And someone else answered, "He owns part of the park?" Denise slammed her folder shut. "This meeting is adjourned until further notice." I didn't move. "No, Denise. The members deserve to hear what happens next. You've fined residents outside your jurisdiction, spent their money on land you don't control, and harassed me for months. That ends tonight." She grabbed her phone, face red. "You'll regret this." "No," I said quietly. "You will." That was the moment I realized we'd hit reversal number 1. The secret leverage wasn't just a legal clause. It was the whole foundation she'd built her power on, and it was crumbling beneath her heels. Now, before we move forward, tell me this. When someone abuses a community's trust for personal gain, should exposure alone be the punishment, or should legal accountability follow? I want to hear where you stand on that. As the crowd dispersed that night, I stood under the buzzing porch light of the clubhouse, binder pressed to my chest. The air smelled like ozone and dust. Somewhere behind me, Denise's voice carried faintly, barking orders to her board. The windmill near my ranch creaked in the distance like a metronome counting down to her downfall. And deep down, I knew. The dominoes had just started to fall. By morning, the whole subdivision was buzzing. Someone had leaked a clip from the meeting, the part where Officer Whitmore confirmed the easement. It hit the community app first, then Facebook, and by noon even the Bastrop Gazette ran a blurb. Local HOA president challenged over property rights dispute. I didn't share it, didn't need to. Momentum had a pulse of its own now. That afternoon, Ellen called. Brace yourself, she's not done. What's next? She's pushing for an emergency injunction, claiming your easement filing interferes with community infrastructure. It's a desperate move. I'll file a response before lunch. And just like that, the harassment hit a new gear. Code enforcement letters, anonymous wellness checks, a drone hovering over my property line one evening, small, buzzing, persistent. I filmed it, logged it, reported it to the sheriff's office. Incident number 24, 104-631. Then, the online smear campaign returned. Denise's allies posted my engineering firm's name with claims I was under investigation for unethical conduct. Pure fiction, but damaging all the same. Clients started calling with cautious voices. Jack, we trust you, but should we be worried? I spent those nights in my office, lights low, drafting a counter-affidavit, fingers treated, embling more from exhaustion than fear. Duke lay by the door, every sound making his ears twitch. The smell of printer toner hung thick as humidity. This is where most people would have folded, but I had one advantage. My patience was engineered. I logged everything, dates, times, copies. Ellen once told me, documentation is justice's slow heartbeat. Still, even a steady heart can falter. Around the third week, I came home to find my back gate open. Nothing stolen, but every feed bag split open, feeds scattered across the dirt. A single note taped to the fence. Sell now, before it gets worse. No signature. Just those 6 words. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my father's old Winchester rifle hanging on the wall. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The point wasn't force. It was resolve. I whispered, "They're trying to scare me, Dad. But they don't know what we built." Ellen came over the next morning, took one look at the note, and shook her head. "We'll report it, but this changes the optics," she said. "Now it's intimidation. The sheriff can't ignore it." He didn't. Deputy Stone came out, dust still on his boots. "We've been getting more HOA-related calls lately," he said, flipping through his pad. "Yours stands out, though. Seems personal." "It's not personal," I said. "It's systemic." He nodded slowly, understanding more than he said. "We'll keep an eye out." "You tell me, where do you draw the line between enforcement and harassment? When fines turn to threats, is that still community governance or something darker? Drop your thoughts below. I read every one. After that visit, I went quiet online. Radio silence. Denise mistook it for defeat, which was perfect, because while she was celebrating, Ellen was finishing the insurance correspondence, and Nate was running property audits through the county's GIS overlay. That's when we found it. HOA Parcel 14C wasn't just under my easement, it extended 42 feet into a floodway buffer, meaning the HOA's beloved park playground was built partly in violation of FEMA floodplain code, and every year they'd certified compliance to keep their liability policy active. I remember Ellen's grin when she showed me the satellite printouts. "This is your hammer," she said. "If you drop this, their insurer pulls coverage overnight." "Let's hold it," I said. "Just until they make one more public move." "Calculated patience," she said, sipping her coffee. "My favorite kind." By July 1st, Denise announced a 4th of July HOA family celebration at the park. Food trucks, fireworks, the whole PR spectacle. Her way of reclaiming control. I circled the date in red ink. That would be our set piece. The week leading up, the tension buzzed. She sent one final certified letter threatening foreclosure over unpaid fines. $26,800 now. I opened it, read it once, and slipped it into the red binder. Evidence number 66. On July 3rd, Nate drove up with a box labeled Access. Inside were laminated maps, FEMA overlays, and a 3-page compliance notice template. If you serve this during the event, he said, you'll have witnesses, county presence, and cameras. It'll be airtight. I nodded, running my fingers over the crisp plastic edges. Tomorrow, I said. Tomorrow we end it. That night, I barely slept. The air was heavy with pre-storm humidity, the sky flickering from distant lightning. Duke whined once, restless, as if he sensed the shift coming. I sat on the porch with a thermos of black coffee, the taste bitter but grounding. When dawn finally broke, I put on my clean denim shirt, tucked the binder under my arm, and slid the certified easement copy into a clear sleeve. My father's hat hung by the door. I put it on. Tomorrow was Independence Day, but Fashul, or me, it would mean something else entirely. Freedom from fear disguised as community. The morning of July 4th broke hot and bright, the kind of Texas heat that makes metal shimmer and tempers short. I parked the truck down the street from the park around 8:45 a.m. Binder on the passenger seat, my pulse steady. Families were already gathering, kids with sparklers, the smell of barbecue smoke rolling low over the field. Denise had gone all out, red, white, and blue bunting, speakers blasting country pop, even a banner that read, Community United. Irony's a funny thing. Nate stood by the snow cone truck, pretending to scroll his phone. Ellen was in the crowd near the pavilion, sunglasses hiding her eyes but not her smile. You ready? She'd texted earlier. Everything's in motion. The county compliance officer, Whitmore, arrived 15 minutes later, clipboard in hand, county badge visible. He wasn't here for the fireworks. I waited until Denise took the mic. Welcome, neighbors, she said, voice amplified across the park. Let's celebrate our beautiful community, our shared standards, our pride, and our future growth. That last phrase, future growth, was my cue. I walked toward the stage, boots crunching on the gravel path. Conversations hushed, a ripple of whispers following. Denise spotted me and stiffened. Mr. Turner, she said, mic still hot. This is a private community event. On public easement ground, I said, stopping 10 feet from her. Ground recorded as access under instrument number 79881. I'm exercising that right. The crowd stirred. Someone muttered, he's got the papers. I held up the clear sleeve, sunlight flashing off the county seal. For the record, this land includes a perpetual access easement granted to the Turner family in 1979, reaffirmed last month. That makes today's event an unauthorized use of that access without written consent. Denise's color drained. You can't interrupt a community gathering. I can, I said, handing the document to Whitmore. And I am. As of 9:13 a.m., this park is subject to easement enforcement. Under county code, all maintenance, events, and expenditures must comply with the rightful holder's consent until jurisdiction is clarified. Whitmore adjusted his cap. He's correct, ma'am. I've confirmed the filing. The county's opened a review for code alignment. Until that's resolved, you'll need to suspend activity that may conflict with property access. You could have heard a pin drop under the bandstand. Denise's face froze. Then she turned to the crowd. This man is exploiting a loophole. Don't let him ruin your holiday. Ellen stepped forward from the crowd, calm as ever. It's not a loophole. It's the law. And you've spent community funds on land you don't control. Someone shouted, Is that true? Then another. Where's our money been going, Denise? The murmurs turned to a low wave of outrage. Denise backed up a step. Everyone relax. We'll address this later. Whitmore raised his voice. For safety, I'm directing you to pause operations until the property review is complete. She stared at him, speechless. That was the exact moment I placed the laminated compliance notice onto the podium. It made a sharp thwap, the sound of truth hitting paper. Cameras caught it. Phones rose. Shutters clicked. Visual beat number 1. The stamped notice gleamed under the July sun, condensation from my hand drying fast on the plastic. Then I spoke, calm but clear. Denise Cole, you've issued illegal fines, misused HOA funds, and authorized trespass. You've been given every chance to correct it. Effective now, this matter transitions to county oversight and insurer review." Her lips trembled. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," I said quietly. "It makes me a neighbor who reads." For a long beat, nobody spoke. Then someone started clapping, soft, awkward. Then another. Within seconds, the applause grew into something louder, roar. It wasn't celebration. It was relief. That was the start of the public unraveling. Reporters from the Gazette caught the confrontation live. By that evening, local stations were running footage under the headline, "HOA Showdown, Resident Challenges Board Over Property Rights." You can imagine what happened next. Sponsors withdrew from the HOA's upcoming Community Renewal Gala, insurers froze reimbursements, and Glenmark's lawyers ghosted Denise's emails. That night, Nate stopped by with a six-pack. "Well," he said, settling on my porch, "that was a thing of beauty." I smiled, exhaustion sinking deep into my bones. One domino down. "More like three," he said. "Word spreading. Other HOAs are checking their plats tonight." The crickets were loud that night. A warm wind rattled the windmill, and I leaned back in my chair, binder resting on my knee. For the first time in months, the air smelled like rain instead of paperwork. But we weren't done yet. This wasn't just about taking her down. It was about rebuilding something better once the dust settled. And that's what I planned next. Now I'll ask you this. If you were in my boots, would you have dropped that notice in front of the whole town or handled it quietly behind closed doors? Let me know what kind of justice you believe in, because the quiet kind never seems to last long where I live. By sunrise the next morning, the footage had gone viral beyond Bastrop County. Local talk radio spun it as the rancher versus the HOA, while a state senator tweeted about private governance gone rogue. I hadn't asked for any of that. But once truth escapes, you can't reel it back in. Ellen warned me to stay calm. "They'll spin it, Jack. Don't gloat, don't post, just document everything." I followed her advice. But Denise? She did exactly what we expected. She doubled down. At 10:22 a.m., she emailed the entire subdivision claiming the so-called easement holder had falsified documents and interfered with emergency access. She attached a scanned letter from Glenmark Legal, threatening to sue for defamation. Ellen checked the metadata within an hour. "It's fake," she said. "Headers show it was written on her laptop. No external signature." That was the final nail. We forwarded it to the insurer and county council. Fraudulent communications under a corporate name, that's a career-ending move. By Friday, the HOA board called an emergency closed session. Denise tried to bar me from attending, citing security concerns. But Officer Whitmore showed up again, uninvited, but official. "Public interest's high," he said, settling into a chair near the door. "Proceed lawfully." The air inside felt like a pressure cooker. Denise's voice was brittle. "We can't operate if this man keeps weaponizing old paperwork." Ellen, calm as a metronome, flipped open a folder. "That old paperwork is still legally binding. You've breached fiduciary duty by enforcing rules on land outside your jurisdiction, falsified communications, and authorized unpermitted development in a floodway. That's 3 counts of mismanagement, 1 of potential fraud." "Those are allegations," Denise snapped. Whitmore spoke up, tone steady. "They're also under county review, and your insurance provider has already requested your resignation to maintain coverage." Her mouth opened, then closed. You could see the realization hit her. Slow, like concrete setting. That was the moment I felt something shift inside me. The revenge flame dimmed. I didn't feel triumph, just quiet clarity. Still, I wasn't done. There had to be reform, not just removal. Knowledge nugget number 4. When an HOA board loses its liability coverage, the state or county often mandates reorganization with oversight, opening the door for governance reform, transparent elections, and statutory compliance audits. That's the doorway we needed. I leaned forward. "You want this to end cleanly? Here's my offer. I'll withhold civil action if this board signs a reform agreement, term limits, public budgets, and an independent ethics committee." Denise's eyes flicked to Ellen, then to Whitmore. "You can't dictate our structure." "I'm not dictating," I said. I'm offering a way out." The room went still except for the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. The treasurer, a nervous man with ink-stained cuffs, finally whispered, "Maybe he's right." By the time we walked out, the board had agreed to present my proposal at an open meeting the following Tuesday. It wasn't victory yet, but it was trajectory. That weekend, my porch became a confessional for neighbors. Folks I hadn't spoken to in years stopped by, some bringing pies, others just apologies. One woman, Carol from Lot 19, said softly, "We thought you were the problem. Turns out you were the proof." I smiled, though my throat tightened. Proof doesn't matter unless it changes something. Tuesday's meeting was held outdoors this time. Too many people for the clubhouse. A local news van parked by the curb, cables snaking across the grass. Denise sat at the far end of the table, pale but composed. I almost respected her for showing up. Ellen opened proceedings with procedural calm. Tonight's agenda, proposed reforms under the Turner Accord. You could hear the pens clicking. Every flashbulb captured fragments of accountability, the ink stamp, the trembling signatures, the murmured thanks from residents who'd had enough of secrecy. Visual beat number 2. A single sheet of paper sliding across the table, the county seal embossed, the words, "Community Reform Charter," visible under a sheen of sweat and fluorescent light. When it was done, Den Paichatas, Izzy stood. "I resign effective immediately." Her voice cracked once. "I thought I was protecting this neighborhood. I see now I was protecting my control." Nobody clapped, nobody jeered. She just left. The rest of us stayed as the first night breeze rolled through the trees. Whitmore recorded the signings, Nate cracked a quiet joke, and Ellen leaned toward me. "That's one hell of a blueprint you drew." "Blueprints are easy," I said. "Living inside them, that's harder." Before I left, I took the microphone for one last thing. This isn't about me winning. It's about us learning the law so we're never bullied by it again. That clip went out that night. Within 24 hours, 1,000 comments poured in. Some angry, some grateful. One said, "Finally someone stood up and stayed lawful." That one stuck. Now let me ask you, because it matters, when corruption collapses, should redemption be part of the outcome? Or is accountability enough on its own? Tell me what you think. I read them all, and it shapes the next fights I take on. Because believe me, there's always a next one. By August, the heat broke. Afternoon storms rolled through almost daily, turning the dust into steam and the creek into a slow brown ribbon that hummed against the banks. The HOA sign out front had changed. Bastrop Ranch Estates, under reorganization, pursuant to Community Reform Charter, July 2024. I drove past it every morning on my way to work, still half disbelieving that the thing had actually happened. The new board invited residents to sit in on open audits. Financial ledgers spread across tables like maps of old mistakes. It wasn't vengeance anymore. It was repair. Ellen helped draft the new bylaws, 3-year term limits, mandatory publication of budgets, a public grievance committee. Nate volunteered to lead the new maintenance subcommittee, this time with written boundaries respecting every inch of recorded land. As for Denise, the last I heard, she'd taken a consulting job in Austin, far from Bastrop and its easements, the county. Attorney's office filed 2 misdemeanor counts, falsifying official correspondence and harassment. She pled no contest, paid fines, and accepted a 1-year community service term. Not prison, but a record. Sometimes justice sounds like a door clicking shut behind you, not slamming. The first reform meeting drew more people than any barbecue the HOA ever threw. Whitmore opened with a short speech about law through transparency, and for the first time the words didn't sound hollow. I stood in the back, hat in hand, watching faces that used to scowl at me now, nodding along to words about fairness and open records. Then Carol from Lot 19 raised a motion for a community education fund, one that would teach residents how property law actually works. They voted yes, unanimously. I donated the first $1,000 and named it after my father, the Henry Turner Integrity Fund. Visual beat number 3. The moment the new seal went on the podium, a fresh stamp smacking paper, the old Rules Enforcement Manual tossed into a recycling bin beside it. You could almost smell the ink and dust of something finally ending. Afterward, I sat outside on the tailgate with Ellen and Nate. The air smelled of wet cedar and diesel. Ellen handed me a thermos. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine," I said, "just trying to get used to quiet." Nate chuckled. "You've earned it, cowboy." I stared at the lights flickering over the park, our park now, and felt the knot in my chest finally loosen. The same land that had nearly broken me was steady again, humming with kids' laughter and the sound of water rolling through the restored ditch line. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized something simple. The law isn't supposed to be a weapon. It's supposed to be a boundary that keeps the honest from burning out. If you believe I fought the right way and that this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And if you know someone living under the thumb of an overreaching HOA, share this, because learning your rights isn't rebellion, it's responsibility. A month later, the Bastrop Gazette ran a follow-up. Reform Charter succeeds. Local HOA becomes model for transparency. There was even a photo of Carol cutting a ribbon at the new community garden. In the background, you could just make out the old windmill, turning slow and easy against the blue. As for me, I still keep the red binder on my desk, edges worn, pages thick with dust and truth. Sometimes I open it just to remind myself that standing your ground doesn't always mean holding it. It means improving it. Next case? A condo board in Pflugerville trying to charge residents $400 a month for aesthetic compliance. Seems I've got another fence to mend.